Welcome to Liberty Voice USA, the channel where truth still matters, facts still speak louder than politics, and where we refuse to let spin replace honesty. In an age where outrage is manufactured and integrity is optional, our mission is simple: cut through the noise and expose the moments that define the state of American democracy. Today we turn to one of those moments, a hearing that should have been routine, but instead revealed the deep cracks in political accountability. It happened when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett faced Speaker Mike Johnson, and with one simple question, she stripped away the carefully rehearsed talking points to expose a truth that left the Speaker silent. It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a confrontation filled with fireworks. It was precision, a moment that demonstrated how powerful genuine inquiry can be when met with political evasion. Crockett's style has become something of a phenomenon in Congress, sharp, informed, and unafraid to challenge hypocrisy when she sees it. She doesn't rely on theatrics, she relies on clarity, and in this exchange, clarity was exactly what dismantled the facade. The topic at hand was government integrity, specifically how political leaders justify actions and words that seem to contradict the very values they claim to uphold. Mike Johnson, the newly elevated Speaker of the House, has tried to position himself as a man of faith, principle, and constitutional respect. But Crockett knew exactly where to press. She framed her question around consistency, the kind of moral and constitutional consistency that the public expects but rarely sees. Her tone was calm, her words were deliberate, and the question was simple. Mr. Speaker, how do you reconcile your public defense of law and order with your party's ongoing effort to undermine the results of an election? The silence that followed spoke louder than any filibuster ever could. Johnson tried to recover, leaning on familiar rhetoric about states' rights and election irregularities. But Crockett wasn't asking about speculation. She was asking about principle. And that's where so many in power stumble, when they're asked to explain not what they do, but why they do it.
Johnson's background as a constitutional lawyer should have equipped him for the question. Yet in that moment, his response revealed something deeper, a pattern of selective interpretation. He spoke about defending democracy, but his record, especially his actions surrounding the 2020 election, tells another story. As one of the key architects behind efforts to challenge legitimate electoral votes, Johnson has often walked a line between faith-driven rhetoric and legally questionable conduct. Crockett's question forced him into that uncomfortable space, where moral justification meets constitutional contradiction. Observers in the room noticed the shift. The Speaker's usual confidence wavered. The moment wasn't about humiliation, it was about exposure. Crockett didn't grandstand, she didn't interrupt, she simply waited. And in that silence, the illusion of moral authority began to crack. Political analysts later described the exchange as a masterclass in congressional accountability, not because it was loud, but because it was quiet and controlled. Crockett's calm demeanor created a contrast that magnified the Speaker's evasiveness. It's a tactic rooted in legal discipline, the art of letting the question do the work. The broader significance of this moment reaches beyond a single hearing. It reflects a growing frustration among Americans, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, who are tired of watching leaders evade responsibility under the guise of party loyalty. The exchange reminded many viewers that truth doesn't need to shout. It only needs space to breathe. For months, Mike Johnson has walked a tightrope between two competing realities. On one side, a base still devoted to the narrative of a stolen election. On the other, a constitutional duty to protect the very system that disproves that claim. Crockett's question forced those two realities to collide, and when they did, the result was silence, because there was no credible bridge between them.
That's what makes this moment more than just a viral clip. It's a mirror held up to the broader condition of American politics, where belief often outweighs evidence and loyalty outweighs logic. Crockett's composure reminded viewers that courage in politics isn't about volume, it's about precision, persistence, and an unwavering commitment to truth. In the days following the hearing, pundits on both sides tried to spin the event. Some accused Crockett of grandstanding. Others praised her for exposing what they saw as institutional hypocrisy. But beneath the commentary lies a simple fact. Accountability should never be seen as partisan. When elected officials are asked direct questions about their actions, the public deserves direct answers. Anything less undermines the foundation of democracy. Crockett's rise in Congress has been marked by moments like this, where she turns what seems like a routine exchange into a moral crossroads. Her approach is not rooted in anger, but in clarity, something increasingly rare in a political culture fueled by noise. She understands that every word spoken in that chamber carries weight, and that truth, when delivered calmly, can still cut through the thickest political armor. For Mike Johnson, this exchange was more than an uncomfortable few minutes. It was a reminder that leadership cannot coexist with selective truth. His silence wasn't just personal hesitation. It was symbolic of a broader political paralysis that grips Washington today. A paralysis created when the pursuit of power eclipses the responsibility of service. What Crockett exposed was not just a momentary lapse of judgment, but a pattern where moral conviction is often used as a shield for political convenience. It's a tactic that's been perfected over decades, invoking faith, freedom, and patriotism to justify policies or actions that betray the very meaning of those words. Her question didn't attack Johnson's faith. It illuminated how often faith is invoked to excuse contradiction.
That's the power of a single, well-placed question in politics. It can pierce through rehearsed defenses, scripted talking points, and moral camouflage. It reminds those in power and those watching that accountability is not a partisan weapon, it's a democratic necessity. Even conservative commentators had to acknowledge the impact of the moment. One analyst on a major network admitted, "She asked the question most Americans have been waiting to hear." That's the point. It wasn't just Crockett's question. It was the question of a nation that has grown tired of watching leaders twist constitutional principles into partisan talking points. In the broader narrative of American politics, moments like this don't fade easily. They become reference points. Clips like these circulate not because they are entertaining, but because they are clarifying. They show, in real time, what truth looks like when it collides with evasion. And while the political world will move on, as it always does, the impression remains. Crockett's calm authority contrasted sharply with Johnson's unease, capturing the essence of what accountability should look like. It was less about confrontation and more about revelation, less about winning an argument and more about exposing a truth that can no longer be ignored. As this story continues to echo across media platforms, one thing becomes clear. The American public is hungry for authenticity. They are no longer satisfied with talking points, press releases, and partisan performances. They want to see real questions met with real answers. Crockett's moment didn't just challenge one politician. It challenged an entire culture of avoidance that has plagued Washington for too long. In the end, it wasn't just a question. It was a test of honesty, of courage, and of leadership. Mike Johnson failed that test, not because he didn't have an answer, but because he couldn't afford to tell the truth. And that's the tragedy of modern politics. When a truth becomes politically inconvenient, silence becomes the strategy. But silence, as history shows, is temporary. The truth always finds its voice, sometimes through a journalist, sometimes through a citizen, and sometimes through a congresswoman who refuses to let power hide behind faith and rhetoric. Jasmine Crockett reminded the country that democracy depends not on the comfort of leaders, but on the courage of those who question them. And that's the essence of this moment, a reminder that every democracy begins to die when questions go unanswered, but it begins to heal when someone has the courage to ask them anyway. Stay tuned, stay aware, and stay truthful. This is Liberty Voice USA, where facts speak louder than politics. Contrast this with Crockett's trajectory. Born in St. Louis in 1981, she grew up watching her mother, a retired Army colonel, embody quiet strength amid systemic barriers. As a public defender in Dallas, she fought for the voiceless, overseeing more than 200 jury trials, exposing injustices in a justice system stacked against the poor and the pigmented. Elected to Congress in 2022 after flipping a Republican seat, she's been a thorn in the side of MAGA orthodoxy from day one. Whether grilling big oil execs on climate denial or calling out election deniers for January 6th complicity, Crockett speaks in plain English, laced with Southern cadence and unyielding facts. Her low IQ moment isn't isolated. It's the latest in a string of clashes that reveal her as the anti-Trump. Where he blusters, she builds cases. Where he divides, she demands accountability. But let's not romanticize too quickly. This exchange isn't just theater. It's a microcosm of the fractures threatening our republic. When a president weaponizes insults against elected representatives, it normalizes a toxicity that seeps into every corner of society. We've seen the fallout. Threats against Crockett spiked after her MTG takedown, forcing her to beef up security. AOC's faced death threats for years, her office a fortress of resolute amid vitriol. And Trump? His low IQ barbs echo the birtherism he peddled against Obama, the casual racism that coded shithole countries as policy. It's a strategy of diminishment designed to discredit before debate even begins.
Yet Crockett's stun lies in her refusal to be diminished. By guaranteeing his IQ is the real low bar, she doesn't just clap back, she invites scrutiny, turning the mirror on a man who's spent decades dodging it. What black woman hurt him isn't gossip, it's a probe into the psyche of power, questioning why threats from competent black women elicit such fixation.